Redefine Yourselfer. Welcome into One Autistic Adult Story, the video series that helps celebrate 2025's National Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month by sharing autistic journeys of adults who suspect they're on the spectrum, self-identify as autistic, or are pursuing or have received a late diagnosis of autism who are living confident autistic lives. I am the confident autistic, an autistic adult, late diagnosed, and let's meet today's guest. Today on One Autistic Story, I'm joined by William O'Flaherty. Did I get your name right?
Yes, you certainly did.
Awesome. I win a gold prize. I don't know. And your very first guest on our very first episode of One Autistic Story. And so let's dive in. Where are you on the journey? And when I say that, I ask, are you in the phase of suspecting that you're autistic, self-identifying, or pursuing or received a late diagnosis of autism?
I have received a late diagnosis. I'm 61 now, and I received my diagnosis just after I turned 60, 13 months ago.
Well, you and I are in the same storyline here. I received mine about 9 months ago at the age of 58. So we're in the same neighborhood. We could have grown
Yeah.
up together. Now, what led you to, because many of us first suspect that we're autistic before we start self-identifying and before we pursue a diagnosis. What kind of made you suspect that you were on the spectrum?
Yeah, well, yeah, that starts about over 15 years ago when I was going through a midlife crisis, would be the short way to summarize
Mm-hmm.
it. And so even though I got my master's degree back in the early 90s, of course, the understanding of autism was different then. But
Right.
back about 15 years ago, when I was going through a lot of different transitions, I heard a little bit about what was then called Asperger's, although that term
Right.
is still used now. And so I was living in uh, Pennsylvania, not the largest city, but anyway, they had various different mental health places. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I looked around a lot, but anyway, a place I called, I specifically asked, I said, I think I might have Asperger's. Can you do an assessment? And they said, sure, we'll be glad to schedule you. Yeah, come on in. They scheduled me. I went in, and the person who scheduled me didn't know what they were talking about because they thought I wanted counseling for being on the spectrum, as we call it
Right.
now. And
Right.
so they didn't charge me for the appointment,
That
and
was nice of them.
yeah, which was nice of them. And so I went on my way. And because of different things going on in my life, I didn't pursue anything. Never
Mm-hmm.
thought much about it because I still had at that time, although I kind of wondered about it, I didn't have a clear picture or understanding. Then my understanding was, well, someone who's autistic doesn't have very much empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I sort of knew some of the other stereotypes, which I knew I didn't
Right.
fit. But it's like, well, I'm a trained counselor. I think I have some empathy. But so that's when it started. And then fast forward to 13 months ago, what led up to getting that diagnosis. And I don't know if you're asked later about the process. It wasn't too difficult of a process, fortunately for
Right.
me. But I was in my line of work, which I've been doing the same job now. It's been well, let's see. My job now I've been doing for 17 years, so it wasn't 15 years ago that happened. That was now a little bit around 20 years ago. Um, but anyway, so I was coming across some various families that I worked with, and I work primarily with kids, but it's with a family dynamic. I actually go in people's homes, and so more and more kids were not your stereotypical autistic, a level 2 or 3, but on level 1, and more were getting diagnosed. And so that led me to reconsider, and I actually helped a family find a place that we didn't know in the area that was actually doing the diagnosis. And
Mm-hmm.
so I checked with them later and said, "Hey, do you assess adults?" And they did. And so that's what led to it. So it was a pretty quick turnaround once I was like, this might explain quite a bit.
Right. A lot of us go through that, explain quite a bit about our lives, and you did mention about you, this what many would call the stereotypical, which I stereotypes can get you into a lot of trouble. That autistic people are not empathetic, where many of us are. Some of us are hyper empathetic for other situations. So, I always tell people don't listen to all the stereotypes because everyone experiences autism differently.
Oh, exactly.
Exactly. So, was there a one particular trait that you had that started you down this rabbit hole of curiosity, or one particular experience that you witnessed in your life that started you on the journey?
Yeah, in terms of that, what comes to mind is, as I noted, I was dealing with more and more families with kids that either the kid that we were working with primarily, or we say the identified, or one of their siblings. And so I was noticing some families that had more than one person on the spectrum. So that helped expand my understanding that the various different traits and dynamics. And then there was one rather large family that had several kids, and I had already volunteered about having been diagnosed with ADHD back in the early 90s.
Right,
And because the parents had mentioned it about themselves, I believe. And so I volunteered that. And then a couple months later, at the end of a session, we were talking about stuff or whatever, and then they asked me, I forget how exactly, but it kind of shocked me. They said, "Well, now you're autistic, right?" And it's like, well, no, I just have ADHD. And so I thought, if this person that has a few kids that are on the spectrum, and they're thinking I might be, it's worth looking into. So I tried not to bias myself though, and
right,
so I tried not to read too much about it. I had already gone to a couple families appointments because of my work, and
right.
so I thought, well, let me just try to schedule something. I would, make some mental notes about things that I thought without reading any additional thing and such. But yeah, so that tipped the scales when someone said, "Hey, aren't you autistic?" Someone that was familiar with the various characteristics of a autistic person.
Now, you chose to pursue a late diagnosis in life, and some people want to do that, some don't. There's pros, cons, etc. Why did you choose to pursue a late diagnosis? What was your motivation for that?
Well, the initial motivation was really just a peace of mind. It's like I knew I consider myself more of an introvert. I never asked years ago when I did some therapy. I really hadn't done. Well, I guess I had done some therapy about 6 or so years ago, but I never asked. Oh, hey, what's my diagnosis? But I
Mhm,
always sort of consider myself to probably fit the qualifications for social phobia. In fact, I'm
mhm.
sure I looked it up, 20, 30 years ago and said, yeah, I don't really like being around people. In fact, after getting the diagnosis, I was reflecting on that aspect, and I said to myself, I said, "Well, William, you don't really hate people. You are just so uncomfortable with the social interaction that you don't like that struggle. So that's why you avoid it. So it's not the people you hate, it's the not knowing how to socially interact very well."
So it's like you like people, you just don't like the social interaction that comes with it. I can relate to that. I mentioned this a lot on my videos on my channel, and I don't know how many you watched and or even you subscribe. Which anyone watching, I please encourage you to subscribe. That's a shameless plug, by the way. I come across very outgoing and extroverted on my videos, and we talked before we began this interview. We both have worked in radio, and that comes from radio. But my personal life, I'm very reclusive, and
Hmm.
and it's a lot of anxiety for me to interact with people, especially on my own personal time. Now, I've written a few books, and when I go to book signings, I can do that because I kind of know what to expect. People are going to ask me for my autograph. I like your book. Thank you very much. Why do you write it? Those kind of things. But in public, I hate it when people walk up to me and start a conversation. I don't know about you, but it is painful to me, and I'm looking for the quickest way out of it. And I don't do well with small talk. What are some of the challenges you have with autism, and how do you cope with them?
Yeah, well, I can relate to the various things that you're saying from working in radio years ago as a part-time thing, and then actually I went through a period of time after being a guidance counselor that I was in a city, and the job that I got there was a downsizing, and so my part-time radio experience enabled me to get a full-time job. But yeah, that social interaction. But I'd learn as your if people have watched any of your videos, and then speaking of shameless plugs, my YouTube channel used to be called Adult Autism in 60 Seconds because I was focusing on 60-second shorts, but then shorts became up to 180 seconds, and I was doing more longer things. So it's now Adult Autism with William. But anyway, I learned different ways of in terms of getting comfortable with speaking. When I was a guidance counselor, I had to do some guidance lessons. I was
Right.
never a teacher where I did my guidance uh, uh, work. They didn't require that. I don't know if every state does, but several apparently do. And so I had to do lessons every other week in each of the classrooms when we had like two kindergarten, two first, two second, and so on and so forth. So I learned, okay, this is what I'm prepared to do. And it was awkward because I wanted to stay on script. Those
Right.
kids better behave. And so that
Yeah.
became
Good
an
luck with
issue
that with
there.
kids.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And then I actually didn't realize I, have all these headphones here, but I'm not using them for our interview here, but
Right.
I just keep it on all the time because even
Hmm.
when I'm at home by myself, I will oftentimes have nothing on the earplugs. It neutralizes things, and that was something that I didn't know about my sound sensitivity per se. I was just kind of used to it, but that it has a very calming effect. So
We
that's some of the things that I think about when you from the question, if I answered it
Oh,
fully.
you did a great job on answering. Yeah, I'm the same way. I have headphones on all the time. Uh, I did not realize I was doing the same thing. Whenever I went anywhere for all my life, since the invention of Walkmans, I had headphones on.
Hmm.
Now, I listened to music because I was into radio and I really love 80s music. In fact, 80s music helps me self-regulate. And I would have it on all the time, just listening to it. And I thought, well, I just like music a lot. But then I tried doing some things without the headphones on, like going to a busy mall or something. And I realized it's not just the music, it is drowning out all that background noise that drove me batty and made me confused, disoriented, and oh man, irritable is an understatement. I would snap at people. I don't know if you've had that experience, but I know I have.
Mm. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, if there's a lot of noise, like when when I might call my wife or she might call me, and if
Hmm.
she's at home and has the TV on, I'd remind her, honey, please mute, pause. I can't have a conversation that's too
Right.
distracting. Um,
Yeah. I have the same thing here with I love my wife. She is on, I mentioned this in another video. She has stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. So she's home all the time. I work from home, which is better because I like the concept of people. I just don't really care for the actual people with the socializing. And she has a TV on all the time to help with her, distract her from the pain. So I love her for that. But there are times she knows I have to wear headphones in the house because it's way too much for me. And she understands that. And I appreciate that. And I would assume your wife understands and supports your challenges and how you cope with them. And I think that's very important for
mhm.
anyone on the spectrum, whether we're in a relationship, a friendship, whatever, that we have people who are supportive and understanding of our challenges and help us through those challenges by being supportive.
Yes, I definitely do. Mhm.
Now, you, and like we mentioned, you did the late diagnosis, and we talked about why. Would you recommend a late diagnosis for people, or discourage them from it, and why?
Yeah, great, good question. I mean, for me, it was for peace of mind, but
Hmm.
actually, it ironically, I regard that it actually helped save my job because after
Hmm.
getting diagnosis, I went through a stage in terms of trying to sort through things to where I knew like being diagnosed autistic wasn't oh, you've got cancer or some other
Right.
disease that means you're going to be numbering your days. I mean, our names are our names our days
It
are
is.
numbered, but we don't know how long we have.
Right.
But so I then thought, well, okay, because I am a rule follower, like, okay, I didn't see
Hmm.
it per se as a rule, but it's like, okay, it's not a sad thing. But then I
No,
didn't realize,
no.
then reflecting on the might have beens, and oh, if I would have been
Hmm.
diagnosed earlier,
The what ifs.
then the grief, and I learned then, even though it's not unique to autistics, that I deal with a with alexithymia. I also deal
Hmm.
with some stuttering too from
Right.
days gone by. But anyway, so I became sort of obsessed with, okay, I realize I don't really know my emotions, so I need to know them more. And it's sort of like the person that is depressed, and then they get depressed about being depressed, and then they have an
Mhm.
endless cycle. And
Yes, a
so
vicious cycle.
I went through some skill regression, and it was impacting my work. And so by
Hmm.
having that official diagnosis for me, then I had contacted the human resource department, and then I realized that I might need to take some time off. So
Hmm.
I went through the process, and I did a leave of absence, and did I guess it would be called medical leave. And
Hmm.
so but just before that, I got called on the carpet about some things that that essentially dealt with skill regression. And
Hmm.
because communication for us as autistics, I mean, everyone likes to have direct communication and clear,
Right.
but it's something that if it's not very clear, and so there were things they went over that I was aware of certain things, but it's like, well, if you would have said more clearly, like we're talking about that day before I went on a leave of absence. And so I mentioned all that to say, there are plenty of people that, an official late diagnosis doesn't do much for them. They don't, need that per se. I didn't really know I needed it. It was helpful for
Hmm.
peace of mind. For some, I'm perfectly, okay with people that just do. There are a range of things. I've covered it on my YouTube channel. I don't know if you have, in terms of some, self assessments. I mean,
Hmm.
there are some very brief ones that's only 10 questions that, does say
Right.
clearly might or might not, and
Right.
encourages you to pursue further. But to pinpoint in terms of your specific question, I do think that people should, because I think that there is that misconception or misunderstanding about what autism is like, and no two autistic people are alike,
Hmm.
and that there are many out there that have gone through a lot of struggles that they don't realize an underlying cause is because of not being diagnosed.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Now, you mentioned in this video you have a YouTube channel, so we have something in common here. So I did a shameless plug for myself a moment ago. It's your turn to tell us all about your channel. And offline, would you send me a link to your channel, and I will be honored to put that in the video description.
Certainly, yes. Yeah. So again, I initially started it out as adult autism in 60 seconds, and I think the search engines will still kind of bring it up that way.
Hmm.
And the whole idea for that was, at the time, the shorts were 60 seconds. And I was like, because of my interest in C.S. Lewis, and I have a podcast I started, I want to say it's around 2012, so for like 13 years, called All About Jack, because C.S. Lewis was known as Jack.
Right.
But in hindsight, I probably should have named it better. But anyway, all that to say, now I've totally distracted myself since I'm talking about my autism channel. So anyway, so because of the Lewis channel, I sort of got that because I wanted to help me remember things about Lewis and
Hmm.
learn more about him by interviewing other book authors. And so for
Right.
my autism channel, I wanted to crystallize the information I was learning. And so that's where I thought I would just totally focus on that. And then I started to expand it and do some other elements. Something that I have is Autistic Profile Series. And
Right.
so that's something that I hope to have you on, Chris. We had talked before about it,
Right.
but
I've just been slammed for a lot of stuff, and I do want to do that. And my
sure.
apologies
But
for that. But
yeah, I was gonna say if you're like me, some things come your way. In fact, I just recorded. Well, the thing that I do doesn't involve an interview, but I can help someone record it. And so I actually just recorded with someone that I had learned about back in August, and then I didn't realize that this person was them and all this stuff. But anyway, so yeah, things can easily get away from
oh
us.
yeah.
But yeah, so I expanded to where I do about 10-minute profiles where people are kind of telling about themselves with a common line of questioning. And then I'm starting to share more about different things that I have been learning and to help to grow and expand. But now, if I know I said it earlier, but so the final name that we'll settle on right now in 2025 is Adult
I like that. You're
Autism.
qualifying it because you
Yeah,
could change it.
it could change. Adult Autism
Disclaimer. I love those.
William. Not that I'm the center of the universe, but I know many other people have channels to where a friend of mine is channel is called Autistic Jenny. So I got a chance to know her. I
Mhm.
don't know what his name is, Ryan, the autistic guy.
Oh
I've
yeah.
not met
Orion
him.
Kelly.
Yeah, Ryan Kelly. So I
Yeah.
thought, name recognition can be helpful, and I
Mhm.
want people to know that it focuses on adult autism because I am a late diagnosed
Right.
individual, and I've had some stuff to compare and contrast all three levels, but it
Mhm.
primarily focuses on someone who is late diagnosed and stuff. So, but I know I'm not sure how much more time we have, but in terms of since I mentioned C.S. Lewis a few times, if you don't mind, another shameless plug here
Go ahead.
is I've got a book coming out. Of course, there we go, the Screwtape Letters Handbook, and so that'll be coming out soon. I actually had an earlier Screwtape Letters book that was a study guide. So I'll at some point put something on my channel about that. But anyway, uh, that's some other things that I do.
Well, awesome. We're gonna have a link to your channel in the show description. Assuming I'm gonna do a disclaimer, assuming that you send it to me in email offline.
Yeah,
I love disclaimers. It keeps you out of trouble.
that's right.
You
Yeah,
said no, I said assuming.
yeah.
Covering my bases here. Is there any advice or anything you would like to say to an autistic adult? Maybe they're suspecting they're on the spectrum, self-identifying, or considering pursuing a late diagnosis. Is there any bit of advice or encouragement you would like to say to that person right now?
Certainly, yeah, I would definitely encourage them to definitely explore it. Like I say, I'm not sure on your channel if you've covered it. I have on mine, but if they do a search for autistic adults, self-assessment,
Mhm.
and it just in terms of going through that process, one of the things, in addition to the skill regression that I dealt with professionally, I realized that I tried to kind of like the old expression of the pendulum swinging from one end to another.
Mhm.
So, I was like unaware of all the stuff. And then I swung it to where I was like overly focused. I kind of likened it to when you drive a car, unless it's an unusual car, the disclaimer in the spirit of that, every car has a rear view mirror. And you do need to look at the what's behind you, or in this case, the
Right.
parallel is the past. Um,
Mhm.
and somehow I raised my hand here. Oops.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. But anyway, the rearview mirror analogy then is like, okay, you will need to look at your past at times, but if you do that so much, then you're going to be going so slow then your life. And so I felt like once I was diagnosed or even going through that, don't get so discouraged. I learned so much about myself. I still have much more to learn, and so it's a continued journey. As a Christian, my faith has been very a central part of my life since I was 16, and so I definitely pray and read the Bible and desire to grow in my faith, and so that has been a integral part. And so, don't lose heart as you're pursuing this. If for those who are listening to this, watching this, and wonder if they're autistic, learn as much as you can about it, and keep moving forward and desiring to grow.
Absolutely. And I know that I was going to edit it out, but then I did a mistake on my end. I was tweaking something here. You raised your hand. I turned off my camera. So we're even. But the reason I turned the camera on is I know it's hard to see the light on it. But on the wall is kind of the big brown thing in the center. My hand's kind of pointing towards it. It's my favorite scripture. And it says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And that has been a lifesaver for me throughout my life with my autism. I have multiple disabilities, visually impaired. I had an incomplete spinal cord injury. I also, like you, was diagnosed with ADHD. And no matter what challenges come in my life, I know I can do it with him who strengthens me, Philippians 4:13.
Amen.
So I would like to thank you for being a guest today on the very first episode of One Autistic Story with a guest. So you could be an answer to your trivia question someday. You never know.
Who was Chris's first guest?
On One Autistic Story. You never know. I may ask that in one of my live streams and give away something. You never know.
Perfect.
Little plug for that I do most Thursday nights. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. I will be putting into the show notes a link to your YouTube channel, and I wish you all the success you can handle and all the confidence you can have as an late diagnosed autistic adult.
Thank you, Chris. It was great to be here.
Now it is your turn. Share your thoughts on this video in the comments. And if you're looking for videos that will help you live confidently autistic, like today's guest, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And when you do not forget to ring the bell to be notified of new videos and when I go live for a weekly live stream. Until next time, this is the Confident Autistic, aka Chris Mitchell, reminding you that I am always here to help you live confidently autistic.